machine, and so it didn't.
Okay, so this is going now.
February is.
All right.
So it was great tracks in your yard, so I figured somebody had it the other day, and they had it again. It was like, oh, it's a fox and geese. I got they don't know about fox and geese, but it's fox and geese.
Wilmington Gas,
Yeah.
Daily Comet 744.
Somebody had a great time.
So,
Daily
we will
Comet
start.
744.
So we're
He's
probably-
coming, he said he was coming.
I know, but
Yeah,
it's 6:30.
Yep.
6:31 actually, so I'm gonna call our budget workshop to order. This is, the purpose of this is to get an introduction and presentation of the first draft of the budget. So Leonard and Roger will be doing that, so turn it over to you.
So Leonard and I are gonna both talk a little bit about what we've got so far in our budget planning. You might remember that we had this meeting scheduled 2 weeks ago, and then last week. And so we did put a lot of this together for that first meeting, but since then some things have changed. We'll try to point those pieces out to you. So in some ways we're a little bit more sure of what some of the our revenue or expenditure items are going to be than we would have been 2 weeks ago. We still, of course, don't know everything, so this is still a very preliminary presentation and plenty of work left to be done on the budget. This is really our first go-round. It's just that we've had some of those pieces added because we are 2 weeks later than we thought we would do. So I'm just going to provide an overview. I'm going to talk about some of the key issues here, the process that we're following, and then Leonard will offer some details, only as much as you're interested in at this point, because as you know, the details do change over the next month or two. Talk a little bit about revenue, tax cap, and fund balances, and then look ahead to our next few budget work sessions. First, this is just first draft, and it's wide open to your feedback, your comments, your directions. But we want you to know that it's preliminary. So our revenue and expenditures are tentative; they're not yet balanced. Right now, we've made a budget that maintains staff and programs. We've made a budget that preserves all material and equipment. We've created a budget that includes some new pieces, some new expenditures, and where these came from were from the school-based future planning discussions that we've been having over the last couple of months. So you're going to see some things in here which, in the first draft budget, are additional expenditure items. And of course, we'll see where those go as we move forward in this process. We do base much of what we're spending money on our identified need, and we do include only estimated salaries because we don't know where negotiations will end at the end of this spring. And so since we don't have a contract yet established for next year, any salary issues right now are just estimates. So some numbers to provide you with. First of all, the CPIU has been finalized, and that's the CPIU that we have to base our tax cap on. It was 1.26% for the previous year, and that means that we do a calculation based on that CPIU. Leonard's already done that calculation. Again, over the last 2 weeks, some of the information has become finalized, so he's been able to calculate the final property tax cap. This is a 1.58% tax cap. Right, so that is the upper limit for districts if, and perhaps for us if we choose to stay within the tax cap. It's also based on the executive branch's proposal for state aid, and they did provide us with an estimate, or the executive branch's proposal, really, and that is right there, $2,874,645. The executive branch proposal is only about $1,000 more than we received from New York State last year. So this is essentially, at this point, a flat revenue item. You will see different numbers if you look online at all the information that's there, because when the governor sends us his information, he compares his proposal last January to his proposal this January. What we compare is what the final budget figures were in April that the legislature approved, that we actually received, with his proposal, and the difference there is just that $1,000. So right now it's flat, but we don't know what the state budget will bring over the next couple of months. So that's an unknown. We also have some cost estimates. Some of them aren't estimates now, some of them are a little more finalized. The BOCES increase is an estimate of 3%. Leonard can talk more about that later. The health insurance premium increase is not an estimate, it's an actual number. The consortium agreed to increasing premiums by 1.5%. That's very low, but it was unanimously agreed to by our consortium. So we are looking at a very modest increase in health insurance premiums for next year. It's also based on retirement. Retirement is a significant chunk of our budget. TRS is teacher retirement, ERS is employee retirement. Both of those figures are a percentage of people's salaries. Both of them are a lower percentage than they were last year. So if you compare last year's budget to this year's budget, we actually do pick up some ground with retirement because the actual percentage of retirement is decreasing. Finally, the total cost, what you're going to see here in our first draft budget proposal, in our first draft budget proposal, is $19,111,897 based. That's a total budget based on a levy of $15,560,252. The first draft budget is $418,015 higher than the property tax cap. So our first draft budget is higher than we think it will be when we're done. Questions about that? Just some other quick things. Every year I always like to point out, because the question always comes up, if you have declining enrollment, how come the budget's not going down? Our enrollment decline, or how come staffing isn't going down? Our enrollment decline is still a smaller percentage than our faculty reductions over the last 9 years. So and this is something I've been pointing out every year. We cut faculty at a higher percentage than we lost students. And so when we talk about adding a position here, adding a position there, we're not going beyond our enrollment. We're actually just catching up to about that, closer to that percentage of our enrollment decline. In terms of our future planning recommendations and increases, so we have in this budget some new items. And like I said before, these all came out of future planning. These came out of what departments, grade levels, and different programs were recommending that they thought would improve education in Lake Placid elementary, middle, and high school. One of those is to return to a librarian at every building. That was a widespread recommendation coming from different programs, talking about things like everything from access to media to research strategies to technology, you name it. Different groups came up with that recommendation. So that was one position that again, we went to the actual programs, grade levels and departments, and that was one program that was loud and clear being recommended. Another one was RTI math. We do not have support for, especially the elementary school, we don't have support in the elementary school for students who struggle in math. This has been something that our math improvement team, because we've been working on our math program now for a couple of years, has identified this. This is a weak spot for us, that we don't have RTI math support. K-12, one of the pieces that they think that we could use is a math coach, and that would be a teacher who would work to help us coordinate a complete K-12 program. So what we did for this budget for now is we added in one position, somebody who could offer both RTI math support and some kind of math coaching support for our math program, K-12. Another one in here was a social studies teacher. And again, that one was recommended out of our future planning process. And then another piece came from our special ed program to make our part-time, one of our part-time positions full-time because of the service needed, again, based on identified need. We find that we have a lot of students that we need to serve. We're also spending additional time these days. Our service providers are spending a lot of time doing Medicaid reporting. And they're doing Medicaid reporting because, again, this is kind of a complicated issue. issue, but essentially, some of our providers, for some of our providers and our services, we can be reimbursed from Medicaid because some of the services we offer are Medicaid type services, right? So our providers, in order to get that reimbursement, our reimbursement has dramatically increased recently with this effort, but it's taken us more time. And so that's one of the pieces there. Other pieces that we've put into this budget in a variety of areas: additional technology integration, locker room renovation. We're talking about the old visiting locker room that right now is being unused. Makerspace in the middle school, high school library, and new weather station computer. These all have found a place somewhere in the budget. Again, coming out of identified need and interest from our future planning process. And then the budget process overall. How we got about doing this? Well, we revised all of our known revenue and expenses. We have been practicing future planning to identify and prioritize our changes, and then we've tried to make strategic changes in this budget based on these priorities and these needs. In terms of things that we know and don't know, when we started with this first draft budget, we did not know what the health insurance increase was going to be. We did not know what the final property tax cap would be. We now know what those numbers are. We still don't know what our BOCES costs are going to be. We'll know that in March. We still don't know what our final state aid amounts are going to be. That's going to be in April. And we still don't know what our final special aid costs, education costs are going to be. And frankly, that's the toughest number to calculate because identified need changes so regularly with special education. So we continue to work on that, and we will eventually land at a number that we think is the right estimate, but it will be an estimate. So from here, I'm going to ask Leonard to talk about the major category expenses. What he uses the first draft budget called A1, and then also to talk about some of the details. So Leonard can talk about some of the budget details, the revenue tax cap and fund balance questions, and the budget reduction schedule. So before I hand it over to Leonard, any questions of anything I brought up or said?
The social studies position, is that because there's a desire to add more electives?
Yeah, it's exactly right.